Okay, in this video we talk about diagnostics. We talk about the appropriateness of using a regression. And one of the very first things that you can do is to evaluate outliers. Do we have data that maybe should be thrown out before we do our analysis? It's not that it didn't happen. The question is it data that you want to plan to? And if it's data that you don't want to plan to, maybe you should throw it out. And the assumption when you throw it out is that, well, I don't want to plan to it because I don't expect that to happen in the future. How do you determine diagnostics or outliers? There's many ways. Let me show you one way with z-scores. A z-score is when you standardize data. What we do is we take the observation, subtract the mean from it, and divide by its standard deviation, and you will get a number somewhere around 0. But if you get a high number, and by definition a high number is generally over 3, or you get a low number, by definition that's usually -3. If you get something bigger than 3 or smaller than -3, that should be cause for concern that that's an abnormally high or low number. That's the benefit of a z-score. I don't need to understand the underlying data. I just need to convert it to a z-score and then look at it and say, okay, these z-scores, some of these are really high. Maybe that's data that's an outlier. So let me show you how to do that. Here's a large data set. We've got a lot of football statistics. We've got rushing yards by team. We've got passing yards, we've got punt yards, a field goal percentage, a turnover differential, penalty yards, how well my defense stops the rush and the pass. Well, again, if you're not a football expert, you may look at those, and again, this is 1976 data. So if you're not a football expert on 1976, then these numbers may not mean anything to you. So how do we determine if we have something abnormally high or low? Let's calculate the z-scores. So the first thing we do is we've got to calculate for every one of these, and I'm going to add a column or two. We've got to calculate the average. Actually, I'll just do it right here. Here's the average. And the standard deviation. So I use the average function, and I use the SDDEV function. So I calculated the average and the standard deviation. And you don't need that many decimals, but let's show at least one. Then I'm going to copy those to all these other ones. Now I've got an average and a standard deviation for games 1, rush yards, pass yards. Well, then over here to the right, I'm going to calculate my z-scores. So let me bring these categories over. And then this is going to be my z-score. Here's the z-score formula. It's equal to the observation minus the average divided by the standard deviation. That's the definition of a z-score. It's the observation minus the average divided by the standard deviation. Now I'm going to copy this down and to the right. So all of my references to B3 and B4 need to have dollar signs in front of the row. I'm going to copy it all the way over to the right, all the way down. Again, the number of decimal points, don't really need that many. I just probably need to show 1 or 2. We'll show 2. And you get a bunch of numbers centered at 0, and some of them are bigger and smaller. But this is the other thing I'm going to do because, again, that's a large data set, and it's actually not that large a data set, but it's a lot of numbers. How do we quickly identify what those are? Let's use conditional formatting. And I'm going to add some rules to these. And I think I'll use this color scale. Let me do my own color scale. I'll do a new rule. And I'm going to do let's use a 3 color scale. So my lowest value, and I'm going to pick a value of a number, and I'm going to put -3. I'm going to have that color be dark red. And then I'm going to use a number in the middle, and I'm going to make that white. And then the highest value, I'm going to also make that a number and be +3. And also make that red. So if I get a number close to -3 or 3, I'll get a red value. If I get something in the middle, close to 0, it'll be closer to white. And there you go. How cool is that? So I can look at this, and again, all I'm looking for are the dark red colors because those are numbers getting close to 3. And really the only ones I see that are significant maybe are these, and that one, and this one. But none of these are greater than or equal to 3, so I probably don't have any outliers. I just have maybe some high or low numbers. And you expect to get some, but if you ever, and I'm just going to make up a number, let's say I would have accidentally typed in, instead of 15, I typed 150. Look what happened. I got that one that's really dark red, and I could look at it and see a z-score. Well, that's plus 4.81. That was probably a mistake or something I certainly don't want to plan to, and you wouldn't be able to go investigate and identify, is that something as, oh, that was a mistake, it was meant to be 15. Okay, that's how you can use z-scores and conditional formatting to identify extremely high or low numbers, which potentially could be outliers. Thanks.